Hello, I'm still Ingo, and I'm really happy to welcome you all here for the third take of this curatorial round of Nusasonic. Maybe we have to explain this because it will feel a bit awkward at the beginning that this is the third start, so we're actually trying to repeat this what we did before, right? Because we're very good at this now, so I think we can just play this, so good. Or we cut this part out, even there would be another option. I'm Ingo from the Goethe-Institut in Jakarta, and the Goethe-Institut in Jakarta is the Goethe-Institut in Southeast Asia, which was strongly involved in the start of Nusasonic, and we all came together here to discuss a bit the roots of Nusasonic, because we have the rare situation and chance to come together in person here on site. Due to the fact that we have here in Ho Chi Minh City, in this amazing studio from Viet, thank you Viet very much for having us, that we have this opportunity to have this moment in the studio together to discuss the roots and perspectives on Nusasonic and to introduce this 5-year-old program and our perspectives on it, and as well to introduce ourselves, which we, I think, never really did, not even on our homepage or so. It's still kind of a bit uncovered. The institutions are there, I know, but not really the persons behind it. And so because we are here now, I thought probably it makes sense to start with a quick round where everyone introduces him or herself with a few sentences, and I'm very pleased and honored to start with you, Taisa, our Canadian member to the Nusasonic crowd from CTM. But now I'm doing what I didn't want to do because I wanted to pass on this microphone.
Thank you, Ingo. So as you just heard, my name is Taisa. I work with CTM Festival in Berlin, which I'll let my colleague Jan introduce a bit later. And my main functions in Nusasonic was to work on editorial and writing content, such as magazine, website, etc. So I'll pass it on to Chuai.
My name is Chuai. I'm from the band The Observatory from Singapore. The Observatory, we organize an annual festival called Playfreely, and also an ongoing studio series where we present visiting musicians or young and upcoming musicians practicing experimental and electronic music called BlackKaji. I actually came here with a colleague, Cheryl Ong, but she's not with us today because she's down with COVID this morning.
This is a moment where I say, that's why I should mention that we all did a COVID test already and why we're not wearing masks here. So,
yeah, we're safe. So I will pass it on to Merv.
I'm Merv Espina from Manila. I'm an artist and organizer. I'm one of the organizers of Wasak Festival, WSK. Wasak means totally wasted or like hungover. So we had roots in the noise scene in the mid-90s. Suddenly we tried to grow up and organize ourselves, supposedly. I'm representing Wasak in this in the curatorial team for the past few years. But in the background also, there's Joey Mejias, Tangal Drilon, and Dale Bazar, who are actually busy at the moment organizing other things with Wasak. So besides the big festival we try to organize annually, we also organize small gigs and talks, anything to do with sound and experimental music and the intersections with sound art and technology. So, and I met Jan in 2017 when Nusasonic didn't even have a name yet. I'll pass it on to Jan.
Yeah, thanks Merv. So my name is Jan Rolf. I'm one of the organizers of CTM Festival in Berlin. It's a festival for, in the broadest sense, experimental and electronic music of all sorts. And we are especially interested in the interconnections of music culture with other forms of art and also with what's going on in society. We do it since 23 years. And yeah, I'm representing CTM together with Taisa here in this project, Nusasonic, but also, of course, CTM is a effort of many heads, and they have also somehow fed into Nusasonic, but haven't practically been involved. Yeah, and now I'm passing on to Maya.
Hello, my name is Maya from Goethe-Institut Jakarta, Goethe-Institut Indonesia. I work in the Cultural Program Department.
Hello, my name is Wo. I'm from Yogyakarta, Indonesia. One of the organizers from Klub. It's an initiative that I founded with Tim O'Donoghue back in 2010. And the idea is to organizing experiments in music and sounds, where at that time in Jogja, especially, it's inactive for quite a while. Which before, like 5 years before, like in 2000, early 2000 until 2005, the noise and the experimental music is really like very dynamic and vibrant, and then it's getting down and like gone, and then we try to to make it again. And then because it's also affected in other forms of music, when the experimental and sound is inactive, the other form of music like pop or metal and hip hop, it's also like not interesting. And then we try to pursuing again, like to make this, ask some artists or musicians to make experiments. That's the idea. And to get better music actually. So not really only in experimental music. That's the idea, to experiment with music and sound. It's just two of us, and then now we have another members who help us to organize events. And when we joined Nusasonic in 2017, we kind of like getting more busy with the scene. And we get to know Murph and GY and John, and we got like really good networks to evolve, not only for the countries that connected in Nusasonic, but also for the Indonesian and the Jogja scene as well. So.
Yeah, thank you. No, cool.
Okay, cool.
Okay, maybe to just get a little bit deeper in the content of Nusasonic, when I was thinking, get an idea of how this conversation might go, I thought, let's see from what kind of project to which other far away project maybe Nusasonic spans in a way, because in this approach of how do you say it, plunging into a broad spectrum of experimental sound and music cultures in Southeast Asia, there are a lot of different topics are touched, obviously. So right now, while we are sitting here, there is a workshop going on about music technologies that transcend the cultural dominance of the European based 440 hertz concert pitch, and deals with other concert pitches which might be, or not, with other pitches and systems which are probably more adequate to pick up Southeast Asian music traditions. Sorry for being so bad in explaining it. I know you all can do this better, and you will do better soon. On the one side, and on the other side, we have in our magazine on the Nusasonic page even stories about the political situation in Myanmar and how sonic resistance could be an important actor, a player in this field. So both of this is quite political. The very first I said is very first example I mentioned is quite decolonial. The other is the liberalization of the me and me society. But nevertheless, it's very different from the methodology, and so it spans a broad thing. So, okay, to get back to the question, just what ties it all together? And I know from our first rehearsal of this conversation that Maya has a pretty amazing, concentrated answer to this. So, may I ask you to give us your insights?
What ties us?
Again?
No.
What was the question? What ties us together?
What ties us together? Not us personally, but the programs from Nusasonic. So.
Different question. What ties us together? What? I mean,
I think we can start with the, really basic ideas, which is from work. Maybe you can
yes.
tell the story in the beginning, how it started.
Yeah, because for me, I think I don't have any choice. Like I just die, but you maybe can, yeah.
Okay.
You have choice.
Oh man. Okay. No. I'm trying to remember the dates. I think we tried to get at least the chronology in order. When there was an interview around the time when the Common Tonalities project was emerging, no? In April, May. So we had a magazine article, and the journalist was asking us questions about
Yes.
how it started. And how I remembered it is I met the Goethe-Institut director of Jakarta.
Heinrich Blumeke.
Yeah, Heinrich Blumeke, when he came to Manila, I think in early 2017. And before he came, he was already in touch with me. I had a chat group with him and another Singaporean curator, Tang Fu Quen. And the three of us were very excited about pushing for this idea of doing a network, at least consolidating networks of different organizers working with sound in Southeast Asia. Then I didn't hear from him for a while, and then Fuquen disappeared and got busy with the Taipei Performing Arts Festival. And then the next email from Henrik was to introduce Jan. And I think that's it, no? And then it was just a few months before Jan actually came over with some members from CTM.
Eunice and Rabi.
Yeah, exactly. Was that right?
Yeah, I think that it was thereabouts.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So that was a bit of an awkward start for us, I think. The thing is, I wasn't aware, so I was approached by Goethe-Institut, and the question was if we as CTM would be interested in coming to Southeast Asia, meet people, organizations, artists, and the idea that was addressed to me was if we could do a kind of mapping of sound art in Southeast Asia and experimental music. And then I said, well, it seems to me like a bit of too large of a project idea, but I'm happy to come for the research. And then after I met people could propose a kind of concept of a project. And then after I met a lot of people, including you guys, but still wasn't aware that there was earlier conversations. Then I came up with a base concept that I, sent to you guys to ask if you would be interested to join. And that was then again a similar idea as yours, to identify and connect a few protagonists, organizations that deal with experimental and experimental music and sound art, and start building ties or strengthening a network, empowering artists, getting mobility, more mobility for artists within the region of Southeast Asia, but then also connecting it to some of European practices and protagonists through the hub of somehow. And there, okay, I sketched this idea that it could be a sequence of events, including workshops and including a kind of publication strand where some reflection on the practices could have a longer sustainable presence. And it happened that this was also quite matching, I think, things that you identified earlier and really stressed that within the region it would be very fruitful and important to have more written accounts, more like discursive discussion around what does it mean to work with sound, with electronic music, with experimental music in the different regions, and how do these different practices connect and step into dialogue also with the social, cultural environment and all of that. And I was then quite happy that everyone wanted to start developing this idea, and that's what we did. I think then we really start discussing and gave the whole thing a shape together, including finding the name and identifying which activities we wanted to do and which people we wanted to involve. And that was also, I think, that's the core. It's very important. Without that, the project wouldn't have been valuable if we wouldn't have found kind of horizontal connect where everyone contributes with his, her voice, and then what actually happens is based on the consensus of this curatorial team.
Tell them what it was called before. The working title was
The working title I came up with was Sound Mesh. Yeah, exactly. Which, it kind of captures a certain idea, but didn't sound well. And of course, Nusasonic is the much more appropriate title for the project.
But we start from there, from that name actually, the mesh, like this, the mesh, and then we started from there, and then I think I and Tengal was discussing a lot about it, like we should make a name that can reflect not only Southeast Asian, but can easily to understand and to pronounce for international people. So it's a long discussion for the name. I remember that we listed lots of names, and but everyone jumped with their ideas, and then we cooking up, and then I think the one thing that we decided to use Nusasonic because just reflects the Southeast Asia with Nusantara ideas, but not really Nusantara. But it's also like easily to.
What is Nusantara?
Nusantara is. Can you explain? You can explain better. You are the expert of these things.
It's an old Javanese term, no?
Old Javanese.
Old Javanese term, which literally translates to outer islands, which is a Javanese imaginary of the larger Malay archipelago, which includes the Philippine archipelago all the way to Sumatra and Borneo in between, and the different linkages between the different maritime cultures. Which actually, maybe also problematic because it centers maritime Southeast Asia, because Thailand and like Myanmar, for example, Laos, which is landlocked, they're not. Cambodia, they're not exactly a Nusantara, no? But it reflects, I think, the actual composition of the group. Because Singapore, the Philippines, and of course Indonesia is actual Nusantara, plus Berlin.
And I think it's the upcoming name of the upcoming capital of Indonesia, right?
Nusantara, yes, upcoming name of the new capital.
statement that was probably not considered. So. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. No. Cool. Thank you for this. Who had the initial idea of this? I heard it was you. I mean, I think honor should be there where it belongs. But some people say you came up with it, with this idea.
No, I got dragged into it. Because like, it's really hard to start things. Or maybe it's, I don't know, with I've had a bad experiences of false starts. So the other person who was trying to workshop this with me, Fuquen, I've known him since 2005. And this idea was there already. Because at that time, I was also making, experimenting with sound, and that had an early wave of organization in the region already, because there was a few people who were active. In Yogyakarta, there was House of Natural Fiber, for example, and they had Selsbotten Festival. And Selsbotten in the region was a bit important, at least in our context, in the Manila context, because they were actively reaching out. And of course, Europe was playing a role as well, because we met in Europe. We didn't meet in Southeast Asia. We were meeting in Transmediale. So I might have met him much earlier on, in the door, when he was the doorman for CTM much early on. But yeah, so the idea was there, but there wasn't really an active kind of network. It was very much informal. We know about each other's practices. There were intersections. Wasak, for example, worked with Observatory in different iterations over the years.
May I just go in, because I think it's very interesting to see how these interconnections were. And you said you know each other practices before, or you had an idea, and these practices are. Just a silly question, maybe, Chiwa. Would you consider your practices with the Observatory? Is it experimental music, and what is experimental?
I think Observatory is more than a music group. I think it was started in the early 2000s to be a space for people to experiment ideas, or to bring new ways of challenging conventional ways of articulation with a new lens. So I think that was our constant approach. So in terms of actually even making music or presenting work, we have always taken this idea to keep pushing things further. So I mean, to answer your question, I don't see ourselves more as a conventional rock or music band. In terms of connections-wise and networks-wise, yes, I think Observatory played in Wasak before. Individually, in the past as well, in the mid-2000s, I had also tried to organize gigs in Singapore and tried to look for individual players around the region, like Venza from House of Natural Fiber. I invited him to Singapore in mid-2000s to do a show with an ensemble of musicians. So I think these kind of informal connections, I think, were really interesting for us to build on, to understand each other from a distance. And then, of course, there are institutions like Japan Foundation or Goethe who come in to facilitate it even more, or to formalize these connections even more, to allow people to meet in a more frequent manner. Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up for me for this past 15, 20 years or so.
Taisa, what I always wanted to ask you is, what was your biggest impression or discovery you ever had during your times, listening to sounds somehow related to Nusasonic?
Listening to, I mean, I think if I think of the project really broadly, the biggest impressions would actually be more the contact and the discussions and dialogue that I had, and also the way to have that dialogue. So having slowly more and more connection with Maya on organizing levels, and then with each of the curators that I didn't know, just learning more of the particularities of regions, and also just what people are wanting to do, what's important to them, was maybe the biggest kind of discovery and impression for me personally, the working process.
Working with Maya. So what was for you, Maya?
Working with Isa. Yeah, my biggest discoveries during working with the Nusasonic, because I usually work as an art manager. In terms of organization, I think it's very interesting but also challenging working with different partners in different countries, different cultures, different preferences, different characters, and just need to facilitate all of them or maybe all of them. It's not always easy or happy, but yeah, I just kind of enjoy every moment. Yeah, like because for me, I think like working with different people are more interesting rather than all these technical or logistic complexities. And this is also one of the subjects that I was not really know of before. So during these 5 years, I also kind of slowly learning about the subject itself. Yeah.
And is there from anyone in this round a particular sound you would remember which was in a way innovative, or is that simply not getting Nusasonic right? So maybe it's the not really getting Nusasonic right. Because I mean, I had my own experiences were definitely more, I mean, as much fun as it is to work with people together, it's as well about music and getting in touch with doing rediscoveries of music styles which I haven't heard for a long time, or even getting in touch with music that it's maybe not so easy accessible, and what you have to listen to a little more often to have an idea of the structure. But I'm as well aware that I'm, together with Maya, the only one who's not really coming out of this field. So it must be very different from your perspectives. So I wonder, we're gonna have a concert tomorrow, and I know the place where we will have the concert, and the stage, which we all have seen already today, and it will be quite a typical concert setting, I would say. But I just thought, remembering an old article from David Byrne from the Talking Heads about, I think, what was it? How architecture helped music evolve, I think is the name of this article, and he there describes the connections between how some certain buildings made some certain sounds. Like, I mean, you can hardly imagine. We recently did that at the Goethe-Institut in Jakarta, to have a punk band in a more like a very classical stage, and it worked in a way, but it was definitely not perfect. And so you have some music that comes with certain rooms. And now we're having for the concert tomorrow, a very typical concert hall, maybe. More actually a dance stage, but whatever. But my question is, what would be the perfect room for a Nusasonic concert? Like, if you could conceptualize it from the scratch, new as you want it. Walk.
Well, I think any places can be suitable if we present like music that really in the context of the places. I think it can be like the concert hall concert venue like we're gonna have later with this kind of music, I think it's okay. I think it's, and like I said before the recording, and this interesting is there will be this air conditioner sounds in the venue, which maybe we don't have it in other places.
I think one interesting observation that I made through the years of Nusasonic is that we actively activated certain spaces which meant something to us or to whichever community that we organize our stuff in. Like in Wasak, we did a show in the ruins. It's really interesting space, and I think in Jogja as well, there were very many interesting spaces that we used. Theatre Garasi and many other, and of course we even went out into the fields to do field recordings and stuff like that. And in Singapore, when we organized BlackKaji Extra Nusasonic, we did it in a space that now doesn't exist anymore, that the National Arts Council took back, which is a space that was kind of like an independent space that most musicians, artists, performers would have gone through, which is called the substation. And I think ours were the second last concert or festival that
in substation.
In substation. So I think we managed to activate spaces like this for Nusasonic, which kind of meant a little bit for all of us.
Yeah, thank you, Chibai. Are there other significant places where Nusasonic played? How was it in Berlin, in the concept of CTM?
Yeah, well, I mean, this question is somehow difficult to answer, no? I mean, the general question. I mean, sound in space, music in space is like always intertwined, but there is no general answer to this. What is the perfect space? There is a million answers to it, and you can approach it from multiple ways. Sometimes an artist has a clear idea. The project aims at a specific space and needs that specific space to unfold. Sometimes it's a response to a space that is a given and so on. And that's the power of music as well. It's a tool of place making as well as it can exist in given spaces. So I don't know, I think that's part of the curatorial work in general, that you have to find these meaningful connections, or sometimes challenge artists also into exploring new situations, which also helps the craft to evolve and the concepts to evolve, giving new opportunities. Sometimes we as the curators, we learn from the artists where they have situated their art in the first place, or to which situation they responded. Let's say, for example, the Jogja noise bombing project is very telling about that, which has always been in the streets of the city, in dialogue with city life around it, a kind of an intervention into the city space, as opposed to artists who are seeking a protected, kind of safe environment where they have high production value and can execute ideas that they have preconceived. I mean, all of that is a constant negotiation. I would say every place is very different also in the availability of different kinds of spaces. It really changes from city to city. Therefore, the work of the artist, the work of the curators is also a way to explore and try to understand what is happening in a city, how the music scene is kind of responding and shaping what's going on in the city. And for Berlin, I could say, well, we have gone through many stages in the past 20 years. Today, Berlin is very known for spaces that have been crafted and developed over years and years to refine the possibilities for certain types of electronic or club music mainly, like with a strong focus, I would say, on the possibility to intensify sonic experiences. So maybe that is what we could bring into Nusasonic as a Berlin base, so to offer that opportunity to artists from Southeast Asia who maybe didn't have much of that opportunity of, let's say, a space that was really honed and created to produce a certain kind of intensive sound experience. For example, like everyone knows about BlackKaji, for example, where you have a very strong, powerful sound system, but you have a space that was changed architectonically, adapted to really represent a certain idea of a sound, so to say. And usually when we bring in artists from many different places into, for example, BlackKaji, then they have a new experience that somehow changes on the spot how they actually perform and what choices they make. And I think that's an experience they take with them, and it triggers various responses and ideas afterwards. So I think, yeah, for Berlin, maybe that was our part to offer this kind of environment. Yeah, enough said.
Thank you.
I think.
Thank you, Jan. After speaking about space, maybe let's raise or have a little light on the question of time and how simultaneous this process worked. We situated it in Southeast Asia with a strong connection to Berlin, obviously. Southeast Asia is obviously very diverse, and we have very different scenes. And I remember from joining the regular meetings with you guys that you are very often discussing like, let's maybe focus on this city or this country because the scene is like this. So there seem to be some simultaneous developments or differences in the scene. So and maybe some even audiences are more developed or more used to experimental music than others. Is there something you could elaborate on and you could have an eye on? Is this something that's, I could even rephrase it the way, why we are doing this in Southeast Asia to this time? I mean, okay, so we had the, well, I remember that we were discussing, like we had a strong focus on Myanmar for a while, yeah. There was a collective which was collaborating strongly. It was developed. I mean, you went to Myanmar, right? And you probably had an experience there and discovered the scene. And so it would be interesting to hear a bit about this and seeing it, comparing it from your Indonesian perspective to see what could you find there, and was this simultaneous developments or not, or what are the differences or similarities? What do I want to say?
Simultaneous.
Thank you.
Well, my experience in Myanmar, of course, I never been there, and I don't know anything about the scene there before. So the impression is the scene is the experimental music and noise and whatsoever is very small there. This is something that we want to know and we want to learn. But from this very small scene, they have this really strong motivation to develop. Like they are really develop like very fast and very dynamic and very vibrant. That's why I'm very excited at that time with Joy. We are super excited that it has to be a new connection and new collaboration and new knowledge as well to work with them to develop this kind of movement, I would say. And yeah, in terms of the spaces as well, there is very challenging, of course, but there is one of the member of our collaborators is called Noise in Yangon. One of the member has really nice, big, fully furnished and fully equipped studio, which is like surprise for me as an Indonesian. Like also, in Indonesia also, like the scene of the experimental music is also actually very small, and we kind of have lacks of infrastructures, basically. And while I'm there to see the studio, it's like, wow, this is like really, they have like really good facilities that can help them to improve or to develop very further. But yeah, unfortunately, and then COVID comes and we have to cancel the project there. But then we still keep working with them with our online programs. I think, yeah, and now we are in Vietnam and we see this, new things and to learn more about, spaces and logistics and how the people or the community or the social, the social, also have challenge us, something like in for example in Berlin, like Jan says, they have very nice facilities for like club music with very powerful sound system, and it doesn't mengganggu disturb the neighbors, for example. There is no neighbors even, But when we do it, when we bring this club music, the loud music to Jogja, to Indonesia, it's just very challenging, The wall is very thin, and then it's crowded residential places there, so it's challenging. That's why we have to, deal with it. And here, I think in Myanmar as well, because it's not happened, then we cannot evaluate what's the effects from the surrounding.
Thank you. Yeah. Challenges. Let's maybe have one perspective on our biggest challenges we had in the last year, and it's pretty obvious, I think, that the whole process of Nusasonic had to shift during the COVID pandemic. And I remember Maya, you and me, even for the first meetings with all of you guys, when we realized that the former planning didn't work and that we can't come together, and so that Nusasonic obviously has to steer in a very different direction. Maya, could you elaborate a bit on your recognition of this and how we shifted this way, and was this something productive at the end?
Our programs during COVID?
Yes, it came with a lot of pressure. We had to allocate resources in different direction and so on. But and then there is a saying in every, what is it? I can only remember it in German. In jeder Chance, in jeder Herausforderung liegt eine Chance. In every challenge there is a chance. So the question would be: is this a chance we picked, or how do you? Because now we are steering back in a bit, right? Now we're doing a bit like that. How everything started in Yogyakarta, which was one of the starting really important, I think, nucleuses of Nusasonic at the beginning. So what I learned from everyone.
Yeah, I think during the COVID it's very difficult for us in terms of work, but also personally. I don't know. During that time, Wok and Joey especially did research in Myanmar, and Joey was also stuck there for a few months. I think it's just not a productive times. It's just not a time for work. But I just feel because we have this project I don't know, for me personally, I just feel obliged to work. Honestly, and then yeah, that's all. But I also think during the COVID, because I think we allow each other of us like about time and also understanding, I think we're also having a stronger connection. For me, honestly, I feel that we take care of each other more, we understand of each other more. We don't really push like for productivity, like hey, we need to do this or this needs to be done, but we just give some space and time. Oh, okay, this one needs to rest, this ones need to be prioritized. And I think, yeah, I don't know, for me, honestly, it's the first time that each of us also step up each other, because usually it's always like, who do this? We need to assign this for this one, and but at that time I really remember that I think each of us just volunteer. We can do this or we can do that. Yeah. For me, honestly, yeah, it's the silver lining of the COVID, and I'm also happy because I think we just maintain that kind of working style until now. Yeah, it's just not. Yeah, we just don't really prioritize about the output and also how to do this right. But yeah, we just prioritize other things.
I think what we really had to learn is to work much more. I mean, we had to learn because there was no alternative to work much more process-based in a way, because all the plannings we did before were obsolete from one second to the next.
Yeah, for me, honestly, the output or the format are not important anymore. I think it's our chemistry in terms of collaborative project. I always prioritize the chemistry and the working relationship, because I mean, we can make a very big festival, but if it's also just a festival, then nothing comes out of it. For me, honestly, it's the connection, it's the exchange, it's the relationship that will stay beyond whatever that we are doing. The festival, the publication, whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, I agree totally. Nusasonic from the start, I think we aimed at a process more than anything else of building relationships, and that's also one of the things we were aiming at from the beginning, that knowing that such a project always is kind of coming to an end at some point, that it needs to be about trying at least to create some lasting relations that go beyond the actual project. And I think we achieved that, and would generally also say that it is something that all of us in our practice, also beyond Nusasonic, have always been aiming at and will always be at the center of what we do. That's why I think we all came to the project with all the capacity, somehow with all the knowledge already that is needed for such a process. Nevertheless, we learned a lot in this process, because it needs this kind of careful, as you said, also this kind of sensitive space that one allows for each other to, get to know each other, have everyone's voice being heard. Everyone has a different tempo, everyone comes from different places. So this needs to happen and unfold, and you cannot always push it. On the other hand, I think we were kind of productive. And as also would like to say that as the idea of a festival, at least for myself, is not to have a kind of like polished output that is only aiming at what the visitor perceives, but also making a festival already is such a very relational process, and it's about building sustainable networks. This has always been part of the festival work as well. But it needs a lot of other activities around it, a much more detailed web of components. And I think that during COVID, we actually managed to find our ways pretty well. And I think we had quite an interesting output in that time, even though you said it was not your priority. I think it was nobody's priority, but it was also clear that, I don't know, we want to continue with this opportunity, and with having that network and the support of Goethe comes also a bit of a responsibility to share that with other artists and people in the communities, and that's what drove us. And so we did a lot of online talks, workshops, we intensified the work on the magazine, focus on writing, so just to find different channels of connection and of sharing of knowledge, of ideas, and I think we can be proud of what we did there. I think it was good.
Actually, I think the pandemic democratized access to Nusasonic because everything was moved online. I think the limitations of the festival is it's physicality. I mean, of course, it's nice. You're in a nice venue, have people, but it's limited to that specific context. And when you moved everything online, like suddenly, artists from Brunei had access and knowledge about Nusasonic could have otherwise not have access to it or didn't really care about it because like they didn't feel that it concerned them. So for me, that was a bright side of the work. And I think it also crystallized some ideas and directions of how to move things forward. Like I think this idea with we're pursuing right now with Hayam, with the tuning, or like pursuing it further, maybe with like if you're like looking into different tuning systems, maybe different time and rhythm systems. Like I think there's clear directions that if not us, then maybe other organizers, other artists can pursue. But maybe because I like text. I enjoy working with Thaisa because I also work I collaborate a lot with researchers and academics. I think it's important to get literature out, and archives to be more accessible. I think that's ultimately how work like this can push beyond its given time frame, like giving tools to more people. That's not just limited to this particular time, but to the different generations and different contexts outside of Southeast Asia. And this is something that we're trying to pursue later on, and maybe this is something that's being seeded right now, like with artists in the workshop who are like barely 20. So hopeful things.
Yeah, I fully agree with what everyone has said so far, and also to add that I think Nusasonic is not only about like the few of us. I think during the pandemic stage, we also actively looked out for other partners who were in the region, who were also doing stuff, and included them into this network rather organically with the radio programs. I think we also kind of redistributed the kind of mutual aid to people who also needed it as well, and at the same time given them a voice to present themselves in this network, because it can't always only be us, and it isn't us all the time. So I think yes, actually, like what Maya said, I mean, we in some way looked at ourselves and we just sank a little bit deeper to relinquish this kind of centralized control There's also not about being very productive all the time. It's not a measure of achievement, but I think it's a matter of help and care for this network to organically grow, that you can't actually put a figure to it.
Yeah, maybe just hearing everyone use the word productive a lot, maybe we also need to just measure that in a different way. We're always measuring productivity with a more tangible output, and actually there has been so much energy and effort being put in just to the discussions that maybe in the end don't lead anywhere, but they always end up producing something sideways. So just to mention that, and maybe to pick up a bit on the writing and archiving aspects that Mert brought up. A very small detail, but I think significant, is not only getting people to write and leave kind of very long-term, maybe either presentations, open doors to new worlds, but also that we managed to publish in original language sometimes when people did not want to write in English. I thought was a really cool step, and would be nice to see that also grow more.
So thank you, everyone, and especially you, Thaisa, and everyone for that's what I would call now closing remarks and the perspective for the future. Thanks for sharing the time here. Thanks for Nusasonic for 5 years. It was us a pleasure, and I know, and I feel like it was a good fun and something for everyone. So something to remember, and something to recognize in the future. Cheers, Jimin.
Yay.